Everyone, and welcome to our Tuesday morning check-in from Westminster United Church in Thunder Bay. I hope this finds you well and staying safe in this time of isolation. And if you're an essential worker of any kind, thank you for keeping us all fed and safe and cared for during this time. As you can see, I'm joined by my usual co-host this morning. That's Bright. Elf has already had her time at the flowers. They are silk. There's nothing they can do that will harm them or the plant, so just let them do their thing. It's good to have you here this morning. So our usual announcement that we're here on Facebook Live Tuesday mornings at 11, Thursday evenings at 7 p.m. for evening prayer, and Sunday morning at 10 o'clock for a time of prayer and reflection, followed by the shared United Church worship over at the Trinity Live website. A reminder to board members that we will be meeting on Thursday evening this week at 7:30 p.m. following evening prayer. Cool. Now, I am sure that I am not alone and that I speak for all of us when I say how grateful I am in this time of pandemic for all of our essential workers. I'd like to talk a little bit this morning about those working in healthcare. No. Come on. Sorry. Especially our staff at the hospitals, as well as those working in long-term care, in group homes, and our rehab centers, and our first responders. I'm sure I've missed some, but for everyone who works in our healthcare system, I just want to say thank you from all of us. And I'd like to specifically talk a bit about nurses today. Now, I think last week was Nurses Week, but today, I checked this morning, and today is actually International Nurses Day. So it's particularly relevant that we should recognize one particularly well-known nurse today. So today is the bicentenary celebration of the birth of Florence Nightingale. She was born on May 12th, 1820, and died on August 13th, 1910, after a lifetime of serving God through her vocation of nursing. And that is how she saw her work, as a vocation and a life of service to God. She was baptized in the Church of England in Florence, Italy, where she was born. And she was born into a wealthy and well-placed, influential family. She spent most of her life living in England. Florence first felt a call from God to serve as a nurse in 1837, but her family was fiercely opposed to it. By 1844, she could not put her service aside any longer and announced to her family that she would begin training as a nurse. And when her training was complete, she was sent to a field hospital in Scutari, Turkey. Now, this was during the Crimean War, and I have to admit, I watched a movie about Florence Nightingale last week, and I discovered how very little I knew about the Crimean War. So that's some interesting side reading if you're interested. And it was in that war that Nightingale was sent, along with 37 other nurses, after her training. What she found when she arrived at the front to care for the wounded was a complete lack of hygiene and a chaotic makeshift hospital where injured soldiers were suffering from lack of care. So she set about to make a difference, and she did. She organized patient care, stressing what we take for granted now: sanitation, keeping wounds clean so that they can heal. Back in England, perhaps the greatest contribution she made to healthcare was the introduction of professional nursing into the horrifying workhouse infirmaries. Again, her faith guided her here, as she believed that God did not bring disease upon people as punishment, which was commonly accepted by Christians at the time. Florence believed that All people deserved to be treated with respect and compassion, especially when they were ill. As she explained in her writings, there is no reason whatever why workhouse infirmaries should not be nursed and the sick cared for as efficiently as in the best nursed hospital. She continued through her career to push for compulsory sanitation, not only in hospital settings, but in private homes. The impact of that alone is astonishing. The reforms she brought to nursing care permanently changed how medicine is practiced. Those were the earliest steps in the hand washing, cleansing, and preventing disease that is so much a part of our lives in these days of COVID. Nightingale was also a pioneer in the practice of gathering medical statistics, creating the first models of what we now know as the pie chart to record and track medical information for the good of public health. In 1859, Nightingale was elected the first female member of the Royal Statistical Society. So when you consider all of these achievements, and you consider that she was a woman born in Victorian times, born to wealth and social status, those achievements are even more impressive. Women in Florence's position were expected to marry well, have children, and host parties, not change the world. But change the world she did in so many ways. I'd like to share with you a letter she wrote to the mother of a fallen soldier during the Crimean War. And the source here is a book called On the Life and Faith of Florence Nightingale by Lynn MacDonald. So this is written from the Barrack Hospital in Scutari on the 12th of April, 1855. And she says, I am very sorry to have to communicate to you the illness of your poor son, Private John Cope, 95th Regiment, number 2884. He was admitted here about 10 days ago, suffering from diarrhea. He was immediately attended to by surgeons, by one of my nurses and myself. He was fed in small quantities and frequently with port wine and arrowroot. He often murmured, dear, dear mother, and tried to say many things to you, that he was well cared for and wanted for nothing, that he had no wish for anything. I sent for the chaplain who came twice, and both times he was quite sensible and prayed fervently, and said he was quite happy in mind and could follow all that was said. He spoke little after this, and sank rapidly and died at 2:00 on the morning of Easter Sunday, quite quietly and without pain, in the full hope of a resurrection with him who rose again on that day. I remain with true sympathy for your grief, Florence Nightingale. P.S. I would have sent you something of his, but he left nothing. Nightingale did much of this letter writing late at night, and the lamp she carried through the long corridors of the Barrack Hospital got her the name, the Lady with the Lamp. So today we remember Florence Nightingale as a heroic pioneer who set in motion all the mechanisms necessary for us to have the remarkable healthcare we have today in Canada and all over the globe. And I think it's because of her that we can name every nurse of every generation as equally heroic. You see, it's the nurses who go toward the crisis, even when it puts them at risk. And they do it because they are called to provide care and comfort to the sick and dying. Their skill, their intelligence, and their compassion come together to bring healing wherever it is needed. If you know a nurse today, offer them a word of thanks. If you are a nurse, or if you're a retired nurse, know your work is appreciated. That's it for this morning, friends. Do take care of yourself, stay safe, and be well. I'll go pick up the flowers now. Hope you have a great day, and we'll see you back here on Thursday evening at 7 p.m. for evening prayer.